Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I will be recapping the men's event from the 2025 Four Continents Championships. My apologies in getting this episode out a little bit later than I would have liked. I appreciate your patience. This was probably the most interesting podium of all four disciplines, largely because this is the first time since 2016 we have not had a Japanese man on the podium. In 2016, it was Patrick Chan, Boyang Jin, and Han Yan. Ever since then, we've had at least one, if not two, Japanese men on the podium. So not the best showing here for the Japanese men, and we'll get into that. And speaking of Boyang Jin, he was not here. He had an injury in the fall, actually had to miss Chinese nationals, and so we definitely missed him here in what could have potentially been his last Four Continents Championship. I think it's likely he'll retire after the Olympics next year, and we know it's very difficult for skaters to make the double of Four Continents and the Olympics in an Olympic season. We also had the withdrawal of Wesley Chu. So all of the Canadian men came here basically trying to prove that they should be on the world team. Canada had not named a man prior to this particular event. So unfortunately for Wesley Chu, he had to withdraw due to injury, and he was replaced by Matthew Newham. And also we had the withdrawal of Maxim Naumov, understandably so, after the tragic death of both of his parents in the plane crash that happened just a few days after Nationals. So getting into the results here, the winner here was Mikhail Shadorov, and I've got to give him his flowers, right? I gave him the blues in his very first Grand Prix this season because he finally had a new free skate after 2 years of Carmina Burana. I was not feeling it. I appreciated his technical jump so much, but was so disappointed in the performance level, the lack of transitions, the lack of presentation that we were really getting from him. And I feel like since that point, we have gotten some improvement for the most part in Shadorov's performances in his skates. Hasn't been perfect, but overall we've seen a gradual improvement. And I thought that here his performances were better than what they were at Asian Winter Games last week, when I felt like he sort of was missing that usual spark that we see from him. In his short program, clean quadlets triple toe combination. I thought he got a ton of distance on that triple axel. Thought it was a pretty good performance out of him. In his free skate, they actually started with the wrong music, which I believe was the free dance music for the Kazakhstan ice dancers. And sometimes that can throw skaters off a little bit, but he took his time, skated around, composed himself, got right back into it when they had the correct music, and it didn't really seem to bother him at all. He, once again in this competition, was doing the triple axel Euler quad Salchow combination instead of the quad toe combo that he did a couple times earlier this season. Still very impressive. I wonder if at some point he wants to combine both of those into the same program. He also does a triple Lutz double axel late in his program, and it looks pretty easy for him. And I feel like he could probably pull one of those crazy Elia combos and either do a triple Lutz triple axel there if he wanted, or even a quad Lutz triple axel like we have seen Elia do at times, which would be crazy. But I think of all of the skaters out there, that Mikhail has the most potential to sort of match Elia with the technical content. Obviously, he's still got a ways to go in the PCS department. So does Elia, right? But here, Mikhail was fourth in PCS, which I just flat out don't agree with. I have to be honest. They had Junwan first in PCS, Kazuki second, Cal third, and then they had Mikhail higher than both Jimmy Ma and Camden, which is just a joke to me. Again, they tend to get excited when skaters come out and skate clean, or they skate a lot with a lot of tech content, and he's not there. He's definitely not there, but huge win for him. He's the first Kazakhstan skater to win a major title since Dennis Ten won Four Continents back in, I believe it was 2015. So a really great outing for him. And I think you've got to put him in the conversation for a podium at Worlds. Men be menning. So anything can happen for sure. And this is definitely going to help him. I think we've seen a lot of skaters do well at Four Continents and really help propel them into the podium at Worlds. Second place here was Junwan Cha, and this has been such a great event for Junwan, really this entire Olympic cycle. He got a bronze here last season where he had a really rough season up until that point, and the year prior to that, 2023, he was fourth just off the podium. It was a really, really strong free skate for him before getting silver at the Worlds a month later. And so getting silver here, I think, is really great for him because, again, it's been kind of an up and down season for him. And it was kind of an up and down competition. There was definitely the opportunity for him to win here, minus a couple of mistakes in both programs on quad jumps for him. In the short program, it was the quad sow cow, which oftentimes he does so beautifully, but popped it into a double, and that was pretty costly. And in the free skate, it was the quad toe. Landed the quad sow cow well, but in the free skate, it was the quad toe, which has been very, very up and down for him. I'm so glad that they took it out of the short program, because whenever he tries to do both quads in the short program, it almost never works. It has a better success rate in the free skate, but still doesn't have a great success rate. But that was the only mistake for him there. Everything else was good. He was skating at home in South Korea. The crowd loved the Ina Bauer. And so I'm just wondering, what's your favorite Junwan style? Because we have seen a variety of styles from him in this Olympic cycle, right? The first season he was doing Michael Jackson and James Bond, and last year he was doing Masquerade Waltz and Batman, and this year we're getting a tango free skate from him. We've got Imagine Dragons in the short program. He's showed just an incredible amount of range, and I think he's been good at really every single style. And I'm wondering what the strategy is going to be from his team for next year into the Olympic season. Like, what do you think style really fits him best? I think the only style we haven't seen from him is maybe a real classical style program, like a Rachmaninoff or Air in a G-string or something like that, which I think he could pull off very well there as also. But I've really enjoyed a lot of his programs this Olympic cycle, and I'm super curious as to what you guys really like best on him. In third place was maybe the most pleasant surprise of the whole event, and this was Jimmy Ma. And I felt for Jimmy so much because he was so close to medaling at nationals, and it felt like this was his best opportunity to be able to do so. Worlds is going to be in Boston. Like, he may have not been able to get on the world team, but it just kind of broke my heart a little bit that he wasn't able to make it on the podium, even though I loved seeing Noamov and Torgashev on the podium there as well. Your heart just felt for him, right? And so here, for him to go out in the short program and do well wasn't that surprising, because I feel like in most competitions we see Jimmy do one of two well. He either does the short program well and then plummets in the free skate, or he did a bad short program, has a great free skate, but isn't able to get himself on the podium because he dug himself in such a hole from the short program. In the short program here, his landings were not amazing, but he landed on one foot and he hung on. Love the footwork section he does in this short program. The music is great. The free skate, he did two quad start, which I was like, okay, keep it up. It is such an interesting mashup of like Claire de Lune and techno music, and he did enough to make it onto the podium here. I was so thrilled for Jimmy. He had pictures of some of the victims of the plane crash and the kiss and cry. He also did, once he received his medal from the medal ceremony, there's also pictures out with him and Efimova and Mitrofanov, who are also part of that skating club as well. And so that was a really just sweet tribute from Jimmy to do that. And I was just, like I said, so thrilled for him to finally get on a podium somewhere, to finally put it together. Was really, really exciting to see. And then came the trio of Japanese skaters. Now, granted, this was not the A team, right? None of these skaters that are here, well, not none of them. Tsuboi is going to Worlds, but obviously Yuma is not here, and obviously Shun Sato is not here. Now, both of those skated at the Asian Winter Games just a week prior to this event. So we have seen them recently, but that's definitely sort of their A team. I honestly would have put Cal in that as well. And Cal came into this event saying that he had no pain in his hip. And so I thought, okay, he's definitely going to get on the podium. And he was the lowest finishing Japanese man here. So for all of my talk at Japanese Nationals about what a weird situation it was going to be if Cal Mura skates better than Tetsuya Tsuboi does at this event, and they've already named Tetsuya to the world team, doesn't matter. Tetsuya did beat him here. Now, Kazuki Tomono was the Japanese skater who was the best out of all of them. He was fourth here, And he actually did a quad toe, triple toe in the short program. Like, he turned out of it, but finally the triple toe instead of a double toe, right? Of course, in the long program, he was back to the quad toe, double toe. And he also doubled his second quad and a double loop in there. So he definitely had an opportunity to get on the podium as well, but just too many mistakes for him. But he does get bragging rights that he finished ahead of his other two Japanese teammates. For Tetsuya Tsuboi, he fell on the quad Salchow in the short program. So he was the lowest finishing Japanese man after the short program. Kazuki had been in third, Kao was in fifth, and he was in sixth. But in the free skate, he definitely had a messy start. The first three jumping passes, all not great. He did a quad Salchow triple toe that he turned out of, a bad step out on his second quad Salchow, but he really rebounded after that and was able to pull himself one spot up to fifth place. In sixth place was Kao Muir. And this was definitely a disappointing finish for him and what's been just a whole frustrating season for him. I questioned putting him on the Four Continents team after Nationals to begin with, because I kind of felt like either you put him on the world team because you feel like he's in the top three skaters, or you just let him rest the rest of the season and get his hip injury straight. Putting him at Four Continents to me seemed like the weirdest option because it comes a little sooner than Worlds. And if you're going to have him go in the second half of the season, I'm like, why would you not send him to Worlds? But this is probably why, because he's just been incredibly inconsistent this season, which has got to be a little bit scary for his team going into the Olympic season, when even going into this season, you thought it would be a slam dunk with Shoma retiring that Kao would be on the world team. He was on the world team last year, right? Did not happen for him this year. And they've really got to rebound, really focus on recovery of the hip or any other injuries that he might have. And maybe the goal going forward is to have a cleaner program with less tech content, which they actually sort of attempted here, because in the in the short program, he was doing a triple flip, triple loop as a combo instead of a quad toe, triple toe, or a quad Salchow triple toe. His best two short programs this season were done in the Grand Prix. So at Skate America, he did a quad Salchow triple toe, and then a quad toe late in the program with a bonus. And he did that again at NHK, finally got over 100 points. So here they definitely went for lower tech content with the hope of being cleaner. And it didn't work out so great because he fell on the triple loop part of that triple flip, triple loop, which he has been doing some in the free skate this season. It always concerns me because the loop jump is usually the one that is most taxing for the hip. And for someone that has a hip injury, I'm always questioning that particular decision to do a triple loop on a combo versus a triple toe. Yes, you get a little bit more points, but is it worth it? So unfortunately, it didn't pay off for him here. Don't know exactly how obviously the quad toe has been difficult for him. I'm assuming because we didn't see it attempted here in either program. The rest of his free skate here, he landed the first quad Salchow, and then he had a spectacular fall, as Kao sometimes does, on the second one. The double axel instead of a triple axel, and of course the next one he lands. And it was just that kind of a day. Just not a meltdown, but just too many mistakes, just like up and down. And I'm sure that even though he said he had no pain here, I'm sure the injury is still having lingering effects, whether it's missed training time or whether it's gotten in his head a little bit. But it's been a bit of a frustrating season for him, as I mentioned, and I hope that we can see Kao really at his best next season. All right, just talking about a couple of other competitors the rest of the way. Camden, in his short program, he was down on both of his quad toe and his triple axel, and he only got a double toe off in his combo, so did a triple Lutz double toe. So he was in 16th after the short program, and I was like, here we go again. Here we go again with Camden. And then in the free skate, it was much better. He popped his first triple axel, but nailed the one in the second half. So then he decided to go for like a Hail Mary triple axel as like a third attempt and just like totally wiped out, which was so unnecessary. It really was the only issue in the program. And I did appreciate that he had a really good fight. And he pulled himself up from 16th to finish 8th, which I think is a much better showing for him. He was obviously under Jimmy Ma here, and he ended up a spot ahead of Tomoki Hiwatashi. So Camden is still very much in play for Worlds. We have not yet heard, if what Jason Brown has done or has not done to demonstrate readiness. The window to do that, I believe, is 3 weeks ahead of the event. I expect at this point that Jason Brown is definitely going to go. And I also feel like that this was probably confirmation of why they want Jason to go, because Camden he's got to scare you a little bit because you just don't know what you're going to get. Are you going to get the Camden we saw in the free skate? Or are you going to get the Camden we saw in the short program? And you're trying to qualify spots for the next Olympics. That's kind of where we're at with Camden. And then after that, we had like the battle of the Canadian men, right? So we had Alexa Rakic here, Roman Sadowski, and Matthew Newham, who was a last-minute replacement for Wesley Chu. So if we go back to like November and you had the Skate Canada Challenge, Alexa Rakic won that event. Anthony Parody was second, who does not have a triple axel and was at Junior Worlds this week, where he unfortunately didn't do particularly well. For the people that are maybe clamoring for him to get the world spot, I think he's just not quite ready yet. Technically, Roman was third at that event and Matthew Newham was fourth at that event. So I think that they're taking some of those results into consideration when they made the decision to send Matthew here instead of David Lee or some of the other competitors who finished ahead of him at Nationals, because Matthew was sixth at Nationals behind Roman, and Alexa Rakic had to withdraw from the free due to illness and was not able to complete that competition. And Wesley Chu withdrew from Canadian Nationals also with a right ankle injury, which I'm sure is the reason that he was not at this event. So basically we had, Alexa and Roman, who had world minimums, Matthew, who was trying to get world minimums here. After the short program, it was Matthew who was ahead of the three men. He had no quads, but he was clean and he got level 4s on everything. So he was 7th after the short program. Roman was 9th after the short program after he fell on his triple axel. And Alexa Rakic landed his quad toe, but that was the only clean jumping pass that he had, and he was 12th after the short program. So going into the free skate, you had a lot of okay, what happens if Matthew finishes ahead of these two other skaters? Are they going to send Matthew? But that did not happen, because ultimately Roman came out with the best finish of the three. They all dropped after the short program. Frankly, Roman in his free skate, he did a beautiful quad salchow to start the program, just over-rotated the triple lutz that he did. He had this planned quad salchow, Euler triple salchow later in the second half of his program, but he just did a double salchow instead of a quad. And then he just hesitated too long going into that triple salchow. And so even though he completed the triple salchow, he did not get credit for that jump because it was too long in between. And so that whole jumping pass got him 1.98 points. Fantastic, right? He also stumbled at a point during his choreo sequence and had to put his hand down. Now, he didn't fall. We've seen some people fall in their choreo sequence, like Mikhail Shadorov earlier this season at a Grand Prix. But he did end up with negative GOE on that element also. But 10th place here was the highest finishing Canadian man, and he was the one man named to the world team. Because remember, last season, Wesley Chu was 17th. Roman was 19th at Worlds. They did not qualify high enough placements to get two men to make it back to Worlds this year, which puts a tremendous amount of pressure on Roman to finish in the top 10 to try to get those two spots back. I don't know that it's going to happen. It can happen, but he's been incredibly inconsistent. And I feel like I just don't know if he's even having fun anymore, because when he does skate, it feels like there's quite a lot of pressure on him to skate well, kind of like it's been for a lot of the Canadian ladies over the last few years, particularly for Maddie Schizas, because they've just had one skater a lot of times, and they need that one skater to skate really, really well. I do like that Roman didn't give up on his program. It's a beautiful program, this interstellar free skate that he does. And frankly, I thought he should have been named to the world team after he won nationals. But I understand Canada wanting to see if Wesley Chu was going to do something better, if Alexa Rakic, who had beaten Roman at the challenge and was the highest finishing Canadian man at Skate Canada, were going to bring something else to the table. But ultimately, I think Roman was probably the way to go. And maybe it would have been better to just have shown confidence in him and not make this feel like the Hunger Games at this particular event. But he is on to Worlds. And Matthew, unfortunately, in his free skate, the very first pass was designed to be a triple axel Euler triple salchow combo, and he popped that triple axel into a single. and there was a lot of missed points from the triple axel. He just had 2 errors in the middle, which was a step and a hand down, but without any quads and without a clean triple axel, he really plummeted in the standings to finish 12th. He still did finish ahead of Alexa Rakic, who only had 1 clean jumping pass in the free skate, and that was a triple axel, and he didn't get any GOE on it whatsoever. Got 0 GOE, but every other jumping pass that he did had negative GOE, unfortunately, and so he ended up in 16th. All right, so that completes my coverage of the men's event. Pamchenko Award for this event, I think the contenders are going to be, like, of course, Mikhail Shadorov winning his first event, Junwan Cha for skating really well here, Jimmy Ma, I think even Kazuki for getting quad toe, triple toe, even though he turned out of it. But I'm going to give it to Jimmy Ma because getting on the podium internationally is huge for him, especially in a non-Olympic season. Like, it wouldn't be as surprising maybe if this happened next year when you had a little bit less not amount of competitors, but the quality of competitors probably will be lower next season. Be a little bit easier to get on the podium. So to get on it this year and to beat the likes of every other Japanese competitor here, I think really fantastic. And also the great tributes that he had, having pictures of the victims of the plane crash as well. All right, let's take a quick look at the Road to 26 trophy, which happened just a few days before Four Continents. And this was such a interesting, puzzling result, whatever you want to say, because Kevin Amos won this event. And I don't know what to say, because when you look at the roster going in, of course, Kevin should win this event. But the last 2 times that we saw him at Europeans and at Grand Prix Final was like spectacularly bad, Kevin. So you just don't know what you were going to get here. Maybe the fact that there were no cameras at this event helped him out. A lot of people on skating Twitter were like, it's because Adam's not here. Any event that both Adam and Kevin are at is a problem. Who knows? But we got good Kevin here. Only a mistake on his triple Lutz in the short program. Again, no video, so I don't know if he stepped out of it, turned out of it, what have you. He didn't fall on it. And then in the free skate, I think the only issue that he had was on his second triple axel in his program. Everything else was clean. I'm sure that the triple toe, double toe that he did earlier in the free skate was designed to be a quad toe attempt, and it wasn't. But clean Kevin, I'm thrilled for. In second place was Nikolai Mimola, who has been named to the world team along with Daniel Grassel. So unfortunately, no Matteo Rizzo. But I understand based upon the finishes at Europeans, I get it. And I also like that we see a little bit more consistency out of Nikolai Mimola, that the Europeans performance feels a little bit less like a fluke. Wasn't as strong here looking at the protocols as it was at Europeans, but good enough to get second and over Sota Yamamoto, who was third here, who is another skater that could have been at Four Continents and was not, but gets on the podium here. He was fourth after the short program, but got on to the podium after Denis Vasilev, who came out in the short program here and did, guess what? A quad Salchow. And guess how it went? Not well. A fall again. I do not understand. I know I've said this a million times, but I still don't understand. I need somebody to make me understand why they keep doing this quad Salchow with Dennis in the short program. It literally never works out. Maybe they're hoping that one day it will, but here was a fantastic opportunity for him to potentially have gotten on the podium with a clean skate. And then in the free skate, it looks like he got, yet again, another fall on that quad Salchow. And some messiness somewhere with both of his triple axels and fell on a late triple loop as well. And that knocked him off the podium to finish in fourth. So that was the podium, and the main contenders. The lone U.S. skater was Liam Kapakis, who was a replacement for Daniel Martinoff, who was originally slated to compete at this event, and he finished 10th here. All right, that completes my coverage of Four Continents. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Again, I appreciate your patience and me getting this out later than I would have liked. Ordinarily, I would say, okay, the next time you're going to hear me is for Worlds, for preview episodes in advance of Worlds. But just due to the incredible roster that we have for Legacy on Ice, literally tomorrow, I'm going to be glued to the TV, and you definitely can expect a podcast. I don't know exactly what it's going to be like, But I just feel with the number of people that we have at this event that we haven't seen in a number of years, the emotion that's going to go through this event, I think we're all going to be in tears multiple times throughout. I don't know how on earth Maxim Nuamov is going to be able to skate. Wow, I just cannot imagine. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'm definitely going to have at least some coverage on talking about it on the podcast. So you can look for that in your podcatcher feed next week. And then after that, also, I might at some point cover, there is a Disney Plus show called Harlem Ice. It's a 5-part documentary series that follows girls figure skating in Harlem as they prepare for competitions, performances. That came out, I think, earlier in the month of February. It's now March. And I plan to catch up on that. And I might do a podcast on that as well. And I always feel like whatever skating show is out there, like I'm going to support. Like I watched Spinning Out, and I didn't watch that other skating show that they had with like the hockey players, and that's like the girl was a figure skater and her brother was a hockey player. I think they were pairs. I don't know. I didn't watch that show. But usually if there's like anything figure skating related, like I will support it because I want more of it. Right. So I might podcast about that at some point. So as always, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you get those things into your feed. You can find me on all the socials at iSkate Podcast, and you can also send me a line at thecuttingedgepod@gmail.com. I hope that you're able to watch Legacy on Ice tomorrow live. If not, they will be replaying it, and hopefully we'll also get clips and things like that as well. All right, you guys have a great rest of your weekend. I'll be back soon.